The city buzzed with life, but for Liam, the streets were cold, harsh, and unyielding. Just 17 years old, he had learned to navigate the unforgiving world of homelessness, surviving on scraps and kindness that rarely came. Each day was a battle to endure, and each night brought a deeper yearning for something better. But life had taught him one thing: hope was a luxury he couldn't afford. One fateful evening, as rain poured relentlessly, Liam took shelter in the doorway of a towering building. The glow of the city lights reflected off the sleek cars parked outside, a stark contrast to his tattered clothes and empty pockets. It was here, under the shadow of wealth and power, that he first crossed paths with Alexander King, a billionaire known for his sharp business mind and an equally guarded heart. Alexander had everything money could buy, but as he stepped out of his luxury car that night, his eyes caught Liam's, two worlds colliding in an instant. Something about the boy's defiant yet vulnerable gaze struck him, stirring memories he had buried long ago. What happened next would change both their lives forever. But was it a chance encounter or destiny unfolding? Stay tuned to find out. Alexander hesitated, his hand on the car door. Something about Liam's expression, a mix of exhaustion and quiet defiance, made him stop. It wasn't pity that drew him closer, but a sense of familiarity, as if he'd seen a reflection of his younger self. Before he could second-guess himself, Alexander walked over, his towering figure casting a shadow over the boy. "Do you have somewhere to go?" he asked, his tone firm but not unkind. Liam, startled, looked up, unsure if this stranger's question was genuine or just another passing comment. "What does it matter?" Liam replied, his voice laced with the kind of bitterness that comes from years of disappointment. Alexander didn't answer right away. He recognized that tone. He'd used it himself once, back when his life wasn't lined with gold. Instead of walking away, he pulled out a business card and handed it to Liam. "Come to this address tomorrow. If you're serious about wanting to change your situation, I can help." Liam stared at the card, torn between hope and skepticism. Offers like this didn't come without strings, and he had learned the hard way not to trust easily. Yet something about Alexander's unwavering gaze made him pocket the card. As Alexander drove off, his mind raced with memories he'd tried to bury. And for Liam, the small card in his pocket felt heavier than it should, carrying with it the weight of a decision that could alter his life forever. The next morning, Liam stood outside the address written on the card. It was an imposing glass building, its polished exterior reflecting a life far removed from his own. Doubts churned in his mind. What if this was a trick? What if they just turned him away? But with nothing left to lose, he pushed open the heavy doors and stepped inside. The receptionist's sharp eyes scanned him, her professional demeanor faltering as she noticed his worn clothes. Before she could say anything, Alexander appeared, his tailored suit a stark contrast to Liam's battered hoodie. Without hesitation, he gestured for Liam to follow. "You're here," Alexander said simply, his tone carrying neither judgment nor surprise. He led Liam to his office, a space that exuded power and control. As they sat, Alexander listened carefully as Liam reluctantly shared fragments of his story. Abandoned at a young age, Liam had survived by relying on his wits and toughness. But the streets had hardened him, leaving little room for trust. Alexander saw something more, a resilience that mirrored his own struggles as a boy growing up in poverty. Yet, he also saw the anger and fear that threatened to consume Liam if left unchecked. Offering help wouldn't be enough. Liam would have to choose to accept it. But Alexander's motives weren't entirely selfless. Helping Liam stirred memories he'd buried for years, memories of a family he had long left behind. As the two continued to talk, it became clear that this encounter was more than just a chance meeting. It was a test of what they were both willing to risk. The conversation between Liam and Alexander grew more intense with each passing minute. As Alexander offered Liam a place to stay, he could see the hesitation in the young man's eyes. It wasn't just fear of the unknown, it was the fear of trusting someone who might eventually let him down, just like everyone else had. Alexander knew that to truly help, he would need to break through that wall. But as the conversation shifted, something unexpected happened. Alexander's phone buzzed, a message that made his face harden. It was from his business partner, warning him that a financial scandal was about to hit his company. The pressure to handle the crisis was mounting, and he couldn't ignore it. As he looked back at Liam, he saw the uncertainty in his eyes. Liam needed a mentor, someone who could guide him, but Alexander was being pulled in a different direction. Meanwhile, Liam, sensing the shift in Alexander's focus, began to retreat inward. His instincts told him that no one ever stayed, that the moment things got difficult, they'd walk away. Alexander had made his offer, but Liam wasn't sure if it was real or just another fleeting act of kindness that would disappear when the storm hit. The tension hung thick between them, neither knowing what the next move would be. Would Alexander be able to balance his responsibilities and Liam's needs? Or would this life-changing encounter unravel before it had a chance to begin? As the silence between them stretched, the weight of unspoken thoughts lingered in the room. Alexander's phone buzzed again, this time with an urgent call from his lawyer. He looked at Liam, frustration evident on his face. "I have to take this," he said, stepping into the other room. For a moment, Liam was left alone in the vast office, the luxurious surroundings feeling more suffocating than comforting. But then, as he sat there, something strange happened. He heard a soft rustling sound from the corner of the room. Turning his head, Liam's eyes landed on a stack of papers on the desk, one of which had fallen to the floor. Curiosity tugged at him, and he couldn't resist picking it up. What he found stunned him. It was a legal document detailing Alexander's financial troubles, mountains of debt, investments on the verge of collapse, and a looming threat to his empire. Liam's heart raced as he quickly realized that the man offering him a lifeline was on the brink of losing everything. The very person he'd hoped could help him was in just as much turmoil as he was, if not more. As the sound of Alexander's voice rose in the other room, Liam felt a new wave of uncertainty. Could he really trust a man whose own world was falling apart? And more importantly, if Alexander couldn't help himself, how could he possibly help Liam? The stakes were higher than either of them could have imagined. Liam's hands shook as he carefully placed the document back on the desk, his mind racing with the implications of what he'd just discovered. He had been so close to trusting Alexander, to believing that the billionaire could offer him the opportunity he so desperately needed. But now, the truth hung in the air. Alexander was drowning in his own struggles. How could he help Liam when his empire was crumbling? Just as the weight of the realization settled in, Alexander returned, his face tight with stress. "I'm sorry about that," he said, his voice uncharacteristically strained. "We're facing a difficult time at the company, but that doesn't change my offer to you, Liam." Liam stood up, his thoughts swirling. "How can you help me when you're fighting your own battles?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with disbelief. "You're losing everything. Why would you bother with someone like me?" Alexander's gaze softened, a vulnerability creeping into his eyes. "Because I've been where you are," he said quietly. "I grew up with nothing, just like you, and I made mistakes, many of them, But I also learned that sometimes the greatest strength comes from facing our darkest moments and pushing forward anyway. For a moment, their eyes locked, both of them understanding the truth that neither had fully acknowledged before. Then Alexander's phone buzzed once more, but this time he didn't reach for it. Instead, he turned to Liam, offering him a genuine smile. "I'm not asking you to trust me because of my wealth. I'm asking you to trust me because we've both been through hell and we can rise together." The twist came moments later. The call Alexander had been avoiding was from a lawyer, confirming that he had won the legal battle and secured enough funds to stabilize his company. Suddenly, the future wasn't as uncertain as it had seemed. Alexander was going to be fine, and now he could truly help Liam build a new life, one step at a time. The relief in Alexander's eyes was unmistakable as he shared the news of his company's recovery. The weight of uncertainty that had hung over him lifted, and in that moment, something shifted between him and Liam. The bond that had started with doubt and hesitation now felt genuine, grounded in shared understanding. Liam, who had spent so much of his life alone, began to see Alexander not just as a billionaire, but as someone who understood the darkness of struggle. Over the following weeks, Alexander kept his word, helping Liam find a place to stay and offering him a job at his company, starting from the ground up. It wasn't easy, but Liam quickly adapted, determined to make the most of the second chance he'd been given. For Alexander, the experience had reawakened something he hadn't realized he'd lost: hope in people. He had spent so many years building his empire that he'd forgotten the true value of human connection. Now, with Liam by his side, he rediscovered that the real wealth in life wasn't measured in money, but in the difference you can make in someone else's life. In the end, both men learned that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most transformative victories. And while their paths had been different, they had found strength in one another's resilience. Their journey wasn't just about survival, it was about rebuilding together.